Alright, you guys, welcome to Warhammer stuff. So today we have 2,000 points of Craft World Yandin versus House Lucarius. So let's go ahead and check out the armies.
And like the video if you like the video, share if you want to share it, comment if you want to comment anything wrong or whatever, and subscribe for more. Alright, so I am playing Chaos Knights, 1955 points of it with 2 CP left. I am House Lucarius. The basic idea of my army is I want to see how much of a Khorne Berserker army I can be. One thing to note is because we are limited on what models are available, these all dogs, this is a War Dog, Stalker, Huntsman, and Carnivore. The models may not be as accurate, but the stats and data sheets are. So anyway, my Warlord is a Knight Rampager because it fits. Basically, for Khorne, has Frenzied Rampage. He has 2 Warlord traits, Eager for the Kill, First Kill, Strike Often. He's basically going to rush forward, always strike first, do tons of damage, maybe, or just die instantly, who knows. So basically, he's a Khorne Berserker. And then we have another Knight Rampager, which is also basically a Khorne Berserker. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So then we move on to War Dogs. So we have Huntsman. This one is Melt-A-Gun, Anti-Tank Melta, and Reaper Chain Talon. So heavy anti-tank and melee rushing forward. One to note is the guy who has a blue arm. He has it's basically a Tzeentch thing. I don't know why it's not. Or he has the Collar of Infernal Brass. Basically -2 to all psychers within 12 inches of him, I believe, and amongst other things. Then we have this War Dog squadron of Avenger Chain Cannon, Havoc Missile Launcher, and Slaughter Claw. So it's the most gunny ones I have, but they still have very strong melee. This War Dog has this one has the Tzeentch one, where every time my opponent spends a command point on a 5-up, I can get something more. And then I have these War Dog Carnivores. And so this one, the red one, has the Helm of Dogs aura. And so, actually, what does that do again? So many abilities. Essentially, reroll wound rolls of 1, and he has +1 attack. So this is basically just a bunch of fighters, just melee. That's it. So it's literally just, this is a Khorne Berserker army in the form of knights. And that is 2,000 points of Chaos Knights.
Alright, you guys, so for my Yandin army, obviously you'll notice there's a lot of Wraith units. That's kind of their feel and their vibe. I actually haven't had a chance to play any of these units in the new Eldar book. I say new Eldar book, but it's old now, so that's how long it's been. But anyway, so I just wanted to give them a go. Yandin is the way to do that. I have a Spirit Seer and Forge World Wraith Seer in the back. Which is the Imperial Armor Compendium. But so I was surprised that Wraith Lords are now elites. So basically my whole army is just elites. So I have a Farseer who's my Warlord. He's just going to pop around and do Farseer things. And then the Spirit Seer is going to kind of sit in a little chunk of them because they have little radius buffs for Wraith Blades and Guard. I'm curious to see, because one Wraith Guard unit, the blue ones here, have the D size and the other just has the regular Wraith Cannon, so I'm curious to see how each one does. And then I have 2 units of Wraith Blades with the axes and 1 with the swords. Again, I just kind of want to see how they go. I figured the axes will probably do better because they have a shield, whereas the swords don't, but, you know, I don't know. And then a good old-fashioned Wraith Lord with a sword, a Bright Lance, and a Missile Launcher, because I didn't really know what I was going up against when I made the list. And I've never actually taken a Wraith Seer, so I don't really know what to do with him, but we'll see what happens. And so, yeah, so I just really kind of want to try the Wraith unit army, and just to see how it goes, and so we'll find out.
Alright, so the mission is 1-2, tear down their icons. Control 1, Control 2, Control more. And the secondary objective is to plant explosives in our opponent's half of the board. So 1 half here, 1 half here. That's not happening with my army, that's for sure. And that is the mission. Alright, and so for secondaries, for the Chaos Knights, I have Ruthless Tyranny, which is basically control at least half of the objectives. 2 points for that. Get 1 victory point for half. If half of them are under the effects of Dread range. Score 2 victory points if I have one or more. If every objective marker is within Dread range. Grind them down. It seems very doable. Abhor the Witch. He has 3 Psychers, so we're talking about 9 points. It was really hard to find a third. And that's it for Chaos Knights.
Yeah, so essentially I had the same issues. Particularly, I was only able to honestly do one of the Eldar ones, and even then I don't really know. So it's a psychic action. I basically do it on an objective that I control, and I get 3 victory points, but I can only do it on one of each of the objectives. So I can only do it once on each objective. Then I have Bring It Down. Naturally, it's anytime anyone takes Knights, I think this is just an automatic. And then Engage on All Fronts. I really couldn't decide on a third one. I don't have enough units to do actions, honestly. So I was like, well, I have more units, I think. I don't know, he actually has a lot of units. So I might be able to just be on different corners. And so, yeah. So third option was not great, but, you know, most of it's not great. We'll see what happens.
Alright, so for deployment, Knights lost the roll-off, so they were made to deploy first. And so I didn't have any real strategy apart from like making sure I had all my guys were in the proper position to rush forward. And so the only thing is my most ranged, and I use that sparingly, but my most ranged units stuck on the back objective, and then the rest was just placed on the line. My opponent let me reshuffle one of my units a little bit, and then I concentrated my forces on the upper half. But with these guys' movement speed, I mean, the board is pretty tiny for me, so that's pretty much it. I just played my own game of just making sure I'd have my guys able to run forward, and that's about it. And yeah.
Yeah, so I played a little, or at least positioned mostly defensive, because he does have high movement speed, and he's probably going to try and get into the thick of fighting pretty quick. So I wanted to make sure that everything was kind of protected. I don't think he can actually do anything on the first turn as far as charges go, but he can definitely get it, at the very least, pretty close. So, yeah, so that's basically what I did, and then I'll probably have to play more reactively, and try and pick and choose bigger targets. But, you know, we'll see what actually happens, because who knows. And yeah.
Alright, so for whoever goes first, why don't you start this off, because I believe I started it the last time.
Well, I think it would be better for me to go second. Yeah, because then I can play more reactively. Like, it allows me to kind of react to what you've done. Most of my stuff is in pretty defensive positions, so I'm not super worried. Obviously, stuff can get shot at, but I mean, what are you gonna do about that? But yeah. And then it'll also allow me to hopefully score some additional points at the end of the 5th turn if we get that far. Because then, you know, I'll be able to score in my turn. I think that going first is always so hard in that 4th to 5th turn transition, as far as gaining points, at least for me. So anyway, so yeah, so I think going second in this case will actually be good, will be my go-to choice.
As for me, I feel like you counterpicked me and made an army that counters me because of all your obviously anti-tank weapons. All my guys have 5 up invuln, and my warlord has 4 up. But interestingly enough, if I go first, essentially so if I go second, it's actually worse for me. So you can move up, pop some shots, do some damage. If I go first, I get halfway up the board, then you pop some shots, and then I clobber you in the next turn. If I go second, you pop shots twice, and I have much less guys to repay the favor. And yeah, that's pretty much all I see. So
So you want to go first?
I need to go first. It'll give me the best advantage. So that's pretty much it. So whatever objectives there are, we'll see. So all right, let's see what happens.
I don't know how much of an objective game this will be as far as seeing what survives within the first 2 turns. I got a 5.
I got 2.
That's unfortunate.
Well, let's see who's right. So Eldar turn 1.
So, I started off with command phase. So, Spirit Seer gave the yellow Wraith Blades the Citronome of Yandin thing, which is essentially an extra attack. And then from there, the Wraith Guard moved up to the wall. The Spirit Seer actually stayed still, so that way he can't really be bothered through the wall or anything like that. And then the Wraith Blades, the yellow ones, kind of moved out and around it. The Wraith Lord poked up to the top of the thing because none of his guys can actually go through buildings, so he has to go through choke points essentially. And my Farseer stayed at the back within a bubble of the different units there. Then my Wraith Seer and Wraith Blades, the blue ones down at the bottom, moved forward, no running, but the purple Wraith Blades did run. I rolled a 3. Because the train went down, it was essentially a 1 that I rolled. So they were able to move 6 inches, and they were able to sit on that objective, which is nice. And then the green Wraith Guard just walked forward as well. And they... Well, that was it. They just walked forward. They're 5 inches. That was it. And that was my command and movement phase. Pretty simple, but still kind of hanging back, holding on to some kind of more defensive-y positions, I guess, maybe. Alright, you guys, so for the psychic phase, a couple of things happened. I started with the Farseer. She started with a psychic action, which is my secondary. I was able to get basically 3 victory points there because it's instant. Anyway, so that succeeded. Then I spent a command point on Multifaceted Mind, and she guided the Wraith Lord. So he's able to reroll hit rolls now, and then I moved on to the Spirit Seer, who gave the yellow Wraith Blades enhanced, which is +1 to hit. And then the Wraith Seer gave the green Wraith Guard protect, but she failed it, and I was like, oh, I still have a Psychic test Strand of Fate, but then I was like, oh, I have to use that before. So I spent a command point and used the Strand of Fate dice because it was the last Psychic power of the turn anyway, so might as well. So it went off just barely, even with the Strand of Fate die. But they got it, so they have +1 to their save. And that was the Psychic phase. All around, extremely successful. Alright, you guys, so shooting phase was pretty simple because honestly I don't actually have a lot of shooting and it's pretty short range for the most part. So my Wraith Lord shot at his Knight Rampager, so as he was shooting he used a stratagem which upped his invuln save, I believe.
Yeah, to 4 up.
Yep. And then so the Bright Lance went through, but he saved on his invul, and then the missile launcher failed to wound, and I also forgot about my Strand of Fate dice there. Then neither of my Wraith Guard units are in range, so my Wraith Seer shot at his War Dog Carnivores, and he failed to wound because I also forgot about both of my Strand of Fate dice. And that was the shooting phase. Literally nothing happened. Alright, you guys. So, essentially for points, I got almost none. I got 3 points for Scry Futures just because it's a psychic action, so that was pretty easy to do. But literally nothing else happened. So, you know, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the turn.
Alright, so for the movement phase, or command phase, there was nothing. Movement, most things ran. My 2 War Dog Stalkers did not, who were on my own objective. They walked so that they could shoot better. The War Dog Carnivore on the bottom ran, went towards the bottom. And then the rest of my guys, everyone else ran and clogged up the top. So the overall idea is to present a target-rich environment where some of them may die, but the important ones won't. Or like he can't kill them all, and so someone's bound to get to his lines. That's pretty much it, because the only true threat in this game right now is his red squad. The rest, they are dangerous, but they're not that dangerous. And so I have Anti-Psyker, War Dog Huntsman up top. I have the Buffer, War Dog Carnivore elsewhere. I have a few shots I can do, but we'll see what happens. Alright, so for shooting phase, up the very top, my War Dog Huntsman. So they have Meltagun's Assault. So 1 shot, it hit, it wounded, he failed his 4-up invuln save, and then I rolled a 5, so immediately deleted 1 Wraith Blade up top. And that was it for the shooting. Then, Then whatchamacallit. Then the war dogs on the bottom all fired at the green squad, and so with all their guns combined, apparently he ignores AP -1 and 2, and he has +1 to a save, so he had 2 ups, but he still rolled 3 ones from all my Avenger chain gun shots, so he lost 1 guy there, and that pretty much was it, and that's the shooting phase. Alright, so for my turn, the only thing I got was Ruthless Tyranny, since I have half the objective markers and half are within range of Dread Test. I get 3. I could have gotten another 2 if I somehow get the other 2 under Dread range, but that's not happening. And that's pretty much it. Everything else will just happen in the battle.
Alright, you guys, so for movement, well, command phase starting, the Spirit Seer gave the Yellow Wraith Blades the Citronome of the Ending again, so they have +1 to attack. Then they move forward towards his War Dog Carnivore and Huntsman. The Red Wraith Guard and the Spirit Seer stayed still. Then I went up, or I guess down, to the Green Wraith Guard, and they basically just kind of plugged the gap here between these 2 building points. And then the Wraith Seer moved forward, no running, and same with the Blue Wraith Blades, also no running. They also just barely touched the objective. And then the Purple Wraith Blades ran to get out of the way for the Farseer, who wasn't able to reach it anyway. That was probably positioning on my end, but whatever. But I rolled a 6 for the run, so they were able to move a total of 9 inches. So now they're just hanging out all the way out there, just chilling, you know, as you be. And then the Farseer moved forward. She's just like 2 inches shy of the objective, but obviously if I run her, then she can't use her psychic powers anyway, so she's just not going to be on it for this turn, which means I won't get the secondary, but yeah, it's whatever. Then the Wraith Lord also moved forward just a little bit, just to kind of plug the gap there on the home objective, because this next turn is going to be probably pretty ugly if I had to guess. And that was the movement phase. Alright, you guys, so for the psychic phase, my Wraith Seer hit Jinx on the War Dog Carnivore, which is -1 to his save. Then the Farseer gave it a go. She did Doom on the front War Dog Stalker, which went off, and then she tried to guide the Green Wraith Guard, but she failed by 1. And then the Spirit Seer gave the Yellow Wraith Blades +1 to hit with Enhance. And that was the psychic phase. Alright, you guys, so for the shooting phase, the Wraith Seer shot at the War Dog Carnivore, and I think it actually went through, so he did like a bunch of damage to him, I believe.
He did 6 damage.
There you go, 6 damage. Then the Green Wraith Guard were going to shoot at the front Purple War Dog, but only to realize that he's out of range. So 2 of them shot at the yellow one, or the one that the Wraith Seer shot at, and then the one guy was able to shoot at the one that's sitting on the middle objective. So the 2 on the other guy were able to do 3 damage to him, and then they did 2 damage on the guy on the center objective, and then the Farseer shot at the War Dog that has -1 to his save, and was actually also able to do 1 damage because I rolled a 6 to wound, so it was an additional, so it was like AP3. Then the Wraith Lord shot at the, I think it was actually the War Dog Carnivore, which is actually not super great, but anyway, so I'm pretty sure he did nothing. And by I'm pretty sure, I mean he did nothing.
Yeah, he missed, and then I made my save.
Yep. And then the Wraith Guard shot at his Knight Rampager, so half of them missed. Only 2 went through. He saved 1, and then one of my dice was a 6, so that was a mortal wound, and then it did 6 damage on the back end, so a total of 7 damage from 1 lucky shot from a Wraith Guard, which was pretty good, I guess, all things considered.
A third of his HP from 1 shot. Yeah. I also spent a CP to give him a 4-pin Invuln save, which didn't matter because I rolled a 1 and a 6 for the save, but whatever.
Right, 50-50 odds, but
yeah.
So yeah, and that was the shooting phase. Alright, you guys, so the Wraith Blades, the yellow ones up top, charged both of his War Dogs that were in front of them, and they got in with like an 11, so...
After passing a Dread test. Yeah.
Correct. And then my Wraith Seer, actually, I used one of my Strands of Fate charge roll dice. So he had an auto 6 and he failed, and then I used a command point and he still failed. I rolled a 2 and then I rolled a 1, and so he only needed a 3. So, you know, it was like better than 50-50 odds. I don't know, was that like 60 or 70-30 or whatever? Anyway, so he failed, so I hate him forever now. But yeah, that was the charge phase. Alright, you guys, so for the fight phase, my Wraith Blades split their attacks 50-50, so they were able to do 10 damage to the Orange War Dog, because they're AP3 and 2 damage. Then my other 3 swung on his War Dog Carnivore. Now, more wounds actually, well, no, actually, it's the exact same. So they would have done 10. However, he used a stratagem that allows him to reduce the damage by 1 coming in. So instead of taking 10 damage on this guy, he took 5 damage. Then the orange guy swung back and did nothing. They all missed because he's weapon skill 5, even with his house's reroll. Yeah. But the yellow guy swung back and was actually able to kill 3 of my Wraith Blades. Because they have an invuln save, but he used his claw, which is D3 plus 3, and so even with the -1 damage reduction, it didn't actually matter. And that was the fight phase. Alright, you guys, so for this turn I got hold 1, hold 2, and then I got 2 points for engage on all fronts, because after, I had units in his bottom table quarter. Because some of them died, and so they were able to be wholly within that table quarter, which I didn't realize until I was actually looking at the table quarter. But anyway, not important. But anyway, so I was not able to get Scry Futures because the Farseer is just shy of that objective, and bring it down, nothing has actually died yet. So I didn't get anything. And so that was my turn in points. But now, I think within this next turn, I think the game is going to be sorted, honestly. So we'll see what happens.
Alright, so for the movement phase, essentially what happened is a bunch of switching. So I spent 2 CP for a stratagem that allows one of my war dogs to be able to fall back and still shoot and charge. So the yellow war dog carnivore at the top fell back by running into his back line, and he can't go around there, so like that little bit of terrain thing is on the ground, so it's not the wall stopping him. The war dog huntsman that was about to die fell back onto the back objective. The other war dog walked up to the yellow wraith blades up top. On the bottom, the purple war dogs, both the war dog stalkers, both of them moved up to get in the middle of the purple and green wraith guards, and the yellow war dog carnivore fell back, or he ran and landed back on the objective. He was able to make it 14 inches, and then the war dog carnivore in the middle moved down towards the bottom, and then my big guys moved up towards the main threat. And that was the movement phase. Alright, so for the shooting phase, at the top left, the War Dog Huntsman fired his Demon Breath Melta Gun into the yellow Wraith Blades. Missed. Fired his Demon Breath Spear, 2 shots. Hit. Both failed to wound. Then, my War Dog Carnivore on the top right fired his Havoc Multi-Missile Launcher into the Wraith Guard. Did a wound. My red Knight Rampager, my Warlord, fired into them with his Heavy Stubber. Did nothing. The green Knight Rampager fired his Heavy Stubber into the Wraith Guard. Did nothing. Then, the War Dog Carnivore in the middle with the red base fired his Havoc Missile Launcher at the green Wraith Guard squad. Did nothing. Then, the combined fire of both of my War Dog Stalkers into the green squad did 4 wounds, and killed 1 and wounded 1 of the green Wraith Guard. And that was the shooting phase. Alright, so for the charge phase, pretty interesting stuff happened. Everyone made it in, but the first guy to charge, the War Dog at the very top, I spent so much CP on getting to charge. My opponent overwatched. He got 2 hits and 2 wounds on 6s, which gave him 2 mortal wounds, and he rolled 5 damage. My guy had 7, so he died. I spent 1 CP to have him spitefully die, and so he blew up and did D3 mortal wounds. He did 2 mortal wounds to the Wraith Guard, finishing off 1, killing it, and then he did 3 mortal wounds to his Spirit Seer, almost killing it. And then after that, everyone charged. My green Knight Rampager rolled double 1s, but he was within 2 inches of the Wraith Lord, so he made it in. My Warlord is able to stick his foot through the wall and get within half an inch of that Wraith Guard, so he's good. And then my War Dogs on the bottom charge the purple squad. My War Dog Carnivore in the middle charge the green squad. I'm hoping I'll be able to move on to the green, or the objective in the back quickly. And so yeah, we'll see what happens. And I think I'll trade one objective for another. Alright, so for the fight phase, I believe I needed to take the back left objective, or back right objective, so I started with my green Knight Rampager. He swung. Wraith Lord had 9 wounds. A single attack from my guy did 8 wounds. So 4 went through, so he was just squished. And I consolidated towards the red squad, which put me onto the objective. Then he interrupted, paid 2 CP. I did not get a refund on that. And so he had his yellow squad swing at my War Dog. I spent 1 CP to reduce the damage by 1, so he would survive. Ended up doing 6 damage to my orange War Dog on the top. After that, then my War Dog Carnivore red with the red base swung, and he just obliterated everything in front of him. Then the purple War Dog Stalkers swung onto the purple squad. There were some abilities I forgot, but I remembered late down the line. So they got reroll to wound of 1 because of the War Dog Carnivore that's above them, the red base one. I forgot that, but I remembered it later. And so because of my house, I get to reroll 1 hit and 1 wound. And so basically the one with the green base killed 3, then the other one, after remembering all the rerolls and stuff, and after horrible rolling, killed 3. So the squad is still around. These guys are the guys with the guns. They have a Slaughter Claw, which is very powerful, but they're more outfitted towards guns, and it's noticeable. So if these were like my melee, more dedicated melee ones, even more dedicated melee ones, they probably would have died. And then up top, my War Dog Huntsman swung on the Wraithblade, and I spent my last CP to give him +1 to hit. So he's hitting on 4s right now because he's degradation, and he's now hitting on 3s. So he hit these Wraithblades and killed them. Killed 2 because he has 4-up invuln saves on these yellow Wraithblades. So 1 survived. And then cut the video there, but I forgot his swings back. So his purple Wraithblades swung on my most bottom War Dog Stalker and did 4 wounds to it. Then what's left of his Wraith Guards up top swung on my Knight Rampager. My Warlord did 1 wound to it. Oh, I forgot to mention, my Warlord swung and only killed like 2 or 3 of them, but that's because he used his fate dice to auto make some of them 6s and stuff like that, and then he rolled a 6. Yeah, and so barely any of them was killed, but he used all his fate for that. And yeah, and that was the fight phase. Alright, a momentous turn. I got full 3 for primary, Ruthless Tyranny, so I got the full 5 because I fulfilled every objective thing. I control half of the No Man's Land ones, and half are under the effects of Dread Range, and I got the 2 extra victory points because all objectives are under the influence of Dread Range. Then grind them down. I killed 2 of his units, his Wraith Lord and his green unit of Wraith Guard, to his 1 of killing one of my guys. And Abhor the Witch, I haven't been able to get to grips with his characters yet. And that is the turn.
Alright, you guys, so for the movement phase, command phase, so Spirits here gave the red Wraith Guard the Citronum of Vianden, giving them battle focus. Then in movement phase, my blue Wraith Blades moved up towards his purple and red War Dog Carnivore. My Farseer moved back onto that bottom objective there. My Wraith Seer moved around his guy to see the guy who's super damaged. And hopefully do something about it, and everyone else just kind of stayed still. So pretty simple movement phase. Alright, you guys, so for the psychic phase, the the Farseer did my mission secondary, but did the secondary, and she failed, so I used a command point to reroll it, and she passed. So I got 3 points there for Scry Futures. And then the Wraith Seer did the -1 save, which is Jinx on the War Dog with the green base, So he's at -1 to his save. Then the Spirit Seer gave +1 to hit to my solo yellow Wraithblade down there because he's got a lot of work to do on that other guy. And that was the Psychic phase. All right, you guys. So for shooting, my Wraith Seer shot at his War Dog all the way in the back, and I used my Strand of Fate hit and wound roll dice to literally just shove it all the way through, because I did not want him to live. Now he still had an invuln save, but he failed it, and so that guy just died. Then the only other shooting I actually had was my red Wraithguard in combat with his Warlord, and so they shot. Because Wraithguard have the Rule War Construct where they can do that. And so 2 of those went through. He used a command point to try... Yeah, okay, to reroll 1, but it failed anyway. And so a total of 11 damage snuck through, taking him down to 12 damage from 24, which is pretty good. I don't know if that'll matter soon because... they'll live another turn. But anyway, that was the shooting phase. Alright, you guys, so for charges, the blue Wraithguard charged both his green and red base War Dog. They needed like a 5 or a 6. They got like a 10. So they easily got in. They were able to get really nice and cozy in there. Then my Wraith Seer charged the one that he was standing right next to, and he only needed 1, but he got like a 5 or something, or a 4. And so he was able to cozy in there, bringing him just a little closer to his back end. And that was the charge phase. Alright, you guys, so I started with my Wraith Seer because he didn't have any points to interrupt. So my Wraith Seer swung on his purple War Dog Stalker, and he was actually able to do a total of 6 damage to him. Because only 1 wound went through, I think. But, you know, pretty lethal, 1 wound. But anyway... and then I swung with my purple Wraithblade. Now I split them 4 on the green base and 3 on the red base, and so the green base guy took like 8 damage. Yeah, 8 damage because he had the -1 to save, so he was pretty handicapped there. And then the other guy only took 6 damage, so 3 wounds snuck through on him. And then he swung with his Warlord on my Wraithguard, and 1 actually managed to live. I used a command point reroll and a fate die for my save, literally just to keep them there. He's Titanic, so he could technically leave and do whatever he wants, but will he? So anyway, and then he swung... since he swung there, I swung with my 1 last yellow Wraithblade, doing 2 damage to him because he only had 3 attacks. And so that was that. Then he started swinging back, so he basically swung back and killed that yellow Wraithblade. And then he swung with the purple War Dog Stalker on my Wraith Seer. He did 3 damage. Then I remembered that I had 2 Wraithblades left that hadn't swung, and so they swung and did 1 damage on his green-based War Dog Stalker. And then he swung back in combination on my blue squad and killed 1 of them. And that was the fight phase. Alright, you guys, so for points, I had 1 primary. I got 3 points for Scry Futures. I got another 2 points for Bring It Down. And Engage in All Fronts I no longer have because my yellow guy died. So, not great for points. He's not doing the greatest for points either, I suppose. But we're also both running out of units, me more so. So we'll see. We might call it after his next turn. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
All right, movement phase. So on the top left, the orange Huntsman moved around the corner to get line of sight of the Spirit Seer Wraithguard. Then my bottom War Dog Stalker fell back onto his point. I count as 5, so I take the objective. The other one moves back towards the home objective. The reasons for this is dread range, and so now I have every objective under dread range, so I'll get an extra 2 points for that. There's no point in having these guys stay in combat, like at all. And so then I have my Night Rampager walk out of combat, because he can. And then my other Night Rampager go down towards the bottom in a way that the red War Dog Carnivore could move up. And that was it. Unfortunately, they can't run because they're falling out of combat, so otherwise I'd probably be on the top objective. So, all right, For the shooting phase, my Warlord fired his heavy stubber into the Wraith Blades. Did nothing. Green did the same and did nothing. Then up top, my Wardog Huntsman fired his Melta-Guns into the Wraith Guard. All of them missed. Alright, so for the charge phase, essentially what happens is first I have my green Knight Rampager charge the Wraith Blades. He makes it in. Then I have my Wardog Huntsman charge only the Spirit Seer. I thought that maybe the Overwatch from the Wraith Guard might cause trouble, so charge that. Then, then I had my Warlord charge the Wraith Blade. He has +1 to charge and reroll charges, so it was okay for him going last. Right, so for the fight phase, so first my Warlord went first, so he has 6 attacks on the charge. He can reroll 1 hit and 1 wound, and because he has done 15 wounds for his class, he's become exalted for the Blood God ability that he has taken, so he has exploding 6s. So he gained 1 extra attack, so he ended up with 7 attacks. Went to wounds, all ended up wounding after a reroll of 1, and so killed, it was a 50-50, so 4 fails, favored me, 3 saves on his part. Then my green Knight Rampager piled in, swung with 6 attacks, didn't have any exploding 6s or anything, but managed to kill the last 2 guys. So that was actually very successful. I didn't expect that because he has 4 up invuln saves. Up top, the Wardog Huntsman swung all of his attacks without the sweep. I should have done the sweep because it was smarter. Onto the Spirit Seer and squished him like a bug. 3 went through. He had horrible saves, or had horrible rolls. But I spent 1 CP to make sure my guy had +1 to hit. And yeah, that was the fight phase. Alright, so for points, I controlled 1, I controlled 2 at the beginning. Ruthless Tyranny. All the victory points are under dread range. Grind them down. I killed 2 to his 1. Abhor the Witch. I killed a Spirit Seer. And that is the turn. Alright. We decided to call it there because while my opponent believes that they can slaughter most of my surviving war dogs, it's not going to win him the game.
At like 2 or 4 wounds left, so like even just base shooting, I could probably pick them off. But points wise, I don't think I can come back from it. And also, the 2 big guys, I don't know necessarily what would happen.
Because 4 up invuln save for my Warlord and like the green one has tons of wounds.
So they only had armor saves. For sure, I think I could probably pull something off.
Yeah, that's where I learned my lesson. These guys are actually made of paper. They die so easily. They need that invul.
Yeah, that invul save though was so random.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So we have no idea what he would do or survive. So, but MVP, LVP. So LVP obviously for me was these Wardog Stalkers. They leaned it heavily in the shooting, but they really didn't do much in the shooting, and so. They were the worst performing. If these were carnivores, the game would have been completely in my favor. I would have slaughtered the bottom. But, man, they just, like, disappointed. Their kill count was very low. 2 to 3 Wraith Lords, or Wraith Guard, entirely, when it should be 5 or 6, like the Giga Chad carnivores. So they were the worst performing, despite them being strategically important. They did win me a lot of points, and every man counted here. I mean, this was a chess game, and I had to make a lot of calls and stuff, but ultimately, these guys were the worst performing in the combat, and I had to pull resources from the other parts of the battlefield in order to deal with their failure. So, MVP, hard call between my Warlord and the Wardog Carnivores, more specifically the one with the Warhelm. So he gave buffs, but he had a very impressive kill count on his own. He killed around probably like 7 or 8 Wraith Guard in total. He wiped out a squad, helping me get grinded down. His squad, the guys overall, took a lot of hits and shots that could have been meant for someone else. And so they applied as a very good screener, and he slaughtered a lot. And my Warlord, who slaughtered almost an entire squad of Wraith Lord, then went down and slaughtered a huge portion of Wraith Guard at the bottom. And so I honestly expected him to die before he ever got into combat. I was surprised that he actually made it there, because like their stat line is deceptive. They actually die really easily, surprisingly. against the right stuff, since my opponent had those ridiculous guns that only 1 or 2 hit him and he's like nearly in a coma.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in the end, strategically, I'll have to give it MVP is these War Dogs. They were where they needed to do. They screened, they took the hits so that others didn't have to. They held objectives, they killed a lot of key enemies and held the fort down. So overall, these were my most valuable and most important players, the War Dog Carnivores. So, what about you?
Well, I don't think there was any like actual like LVPs, like nothing like was like a terrible unit. I think in this game, I think the Wraith Guard with the D sides did the worst. Because they had high strength, high damage, high shot amount, but they were only a single damage. So I think they're LVPs just because they didn't do enough for me in this game.
I mean, their stat line is crazy. There's basically flamers, strength 10, AP -4 flamers. That's...
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, in this game, like, so it's not a terrible unit. I mean, it's only got 12-inch range, but it's not a terrible unit. It just didn't work well in this game.
Yeah, against this matchup.
Now the Wraith Blades with the axes, I think would be in running for the MVPs because they had the invuln saves, they were doing good damage, or the Wraith Guard with the Wraith Cannons because those are...
Yeah, those were the major threat of the game for me.
Yeah. So I think MVP probably would have to go to... I honestly don't know. I don't think either of them actually really killed anything. So
that's because I kept retreating things from combat.
Right, so I guess maybe the Wraith Guard, because over the course of the game, they were... No, I don't know. I guess okay, so the Wraith Blades. Because they were able to hold, they were able to sit, they were able to chop.
Mm-hmm. And they lasted 4 combats, essentially.
Yeah, so I would say they were the MVPs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, alright, so GG's. Alright, so for the armies, well, for me, Chaos Knights is a bunch of cool flavors. So surprisingly, I was able to build them as a Khorne Berserker. So this was basically a giant Khorne Berserker army, and Chaos Knights facilitated that with some pretty interesting rules and setup, but with great flexibility. I can see why, like in tournaments, people run tons of War Dogs, because like these guys were getting hit. They had the best stratagems. Were like 1 CP, +1 to hit, 4 up invuln save, -1 damage. It's like it's really good. And so these big guys, honestly, they're not the best. If I got rid of these guys and just replaced them with like 2 squads of carnivores, which probably would be around points equivalent, it would have been an absolute slaughter. And so, but it's like, it's a weird thing about this army. It's like, yeah, the best models are the War Dogs. Coolest models are the ones people wouldn't want to bring. So, that's sad. But we'll see what 10th brings to them. So what about you?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed the Wraith units. I think they have a lot of strengths. So one, as far as the Aeldari list goes, they're probably one of the sturdiest units you can take. And they do tons of damage. Now, obviously, they're crazy expensive. I say crazy expensive. They're like 35, 40 points or so. I don't know. Anyway, but so they're sturdy. They do a lot of damage. They actually have a decent amount of attacks, even the regular Wraith Guard. And so I actually like them. The problem is they're quite slow as far as Eldar goes. So I think that was something that was a little weird to try and deal with. But I did like them. Even the Aeand in the craft world itself at reducing AP, if it's at a -1 or -2, was a big deal. That actually saved me from dealing with a lot of the AP and keeping their saves as was for almost all of your shooting, actually. I think it was actually all your shooting. Except maybe one thing, but and so I think it's a decent craft world. I think it does focus on Wraith units, but I think having that mix of units would probably have done more for me. So not just doing Wraith units, but I wanted to try them out and kind of see all their options and see how
it also depends on the whatchamacallit, the matchup, because for here their toughness meant nothing, absolutely at all. I was still wounding you on 2s in melee.
Yeah.
So, And that's a thing to keep into consideration. Like this army would probably, you were really whittling me down and cutting me down, but I was still cutting you like paper in return.
Yeah, 'cause you had the giant power claws and stuff. So, yeah. But so I did like it. Obviously, you know, they have like a unique character, which is Uriel, but he's an autarch, and you get like pirates and stuff with him. So it's a different thing altogether. But I actually enjoyed it. So what did you think of the game?
Overall for the game, well, we were as few models as possible, high, tough, lots of tough units. It really was like, it was a bunch of dice rolls, essentially. We made our best plans, but we were constantly rotating based off where the dice led us, especially with all the 4-up invuln saves on your side and the ones on the key units on my side. I did like strategically the best, so like I knew you could easily destroy me. Because of your positioning and stuff, 18 inches, you could easily just push out a little bit and have me falling back or getting destroyed by the Wraith Guard. So I was like, all right, let's focus everything on there. I have my 2 big guys here. The green one was not as important or as powerful as my Warlord, so he would be in the front, shielding it, and then of course all the War Dogs that were screening. So my idea was to throw so much in front of you on the top that you would spread out your shots to deal with what I deemed were acceptable losses. And in the bottom, I just threw out what I was able to stall you, and then hopefully I would take the top and just pour down, which is pretty much what did happen in the end. But like,
yeah, I would say in this game, unlike several of our games in the past, there was no what I would consider catastrophic dice rolls. Either or. So like I didn't have any like particularly devastating failures in my rolling or wins, and neither did you. So I think that was nice that the dice were more intermediary in this. And so but yeah, so I think the hard part was my range was a little shorter, so like instead of having more time to kind of shoot off units, I didn't. And so yeah, I don't know, I probably could have played it a little differently. Remembering how slow they are, I probably should have not actually moved out very much at all and focused on just kind of re-angling to adjust to your kind of movement. And then flexed out more with the Wraith Guard than per se anything else. But yeah, no, I mean, I think for the most part it was kind of okay. You know, just charges didn't go my way, or not even like charges, because almost everything succeeded that I tried. So yeah, just the game just didn't go my way. But I think leading maybe with more Wraith Guard, not more Wraith Guard, but more with them and helping keep them alive probably would have helped me more.
Yeah, it's like playing the overall strategy to counter your opponent.
Yeah. But yeah, so no. But other than that, so like again, the dice didn't play like a major factor in what had happened. So I think I mean I think it was a good game.
Yeah, it was a good game, and one of our shorter ones, thankfully. Yeah. And all right, so GG's, and we'll see you all next week, and we'll keep playing 9th, enjoying our last 9th edition games until 10th edition comes, because we're not big enough to get the codex, because going onto YouTube and see all these big YouTubers like, we got 10th, even this Age of Sigmar guy got 10th given to him. It's like, okay, whatever. All right, so adios.